How many people have you slept with in your life? Take a moment. Think about the number. Maybe you can count them on one hand. Maybe you need two. Maybe you are quietly doing math in your head right now. Whatever your number is, it is almost certainly a fraction of what your ancient ancestors racked up, not because they were reckless, not because they lacked self-control, but because the entire social architecture they lived inside made variety not just acceptable, but necessary for survival. For roughly 300,000 years, your body evolved inside a completely different kind of world, a world without marriage certificates, without jealousy-driven violence, without the concept of sexual ownership. And understanding that world will completely change how you think about your own biology. Here is the uncomfortable truth modern culture does not want you to sit with. Monogamy is not ancient. It is new, very new, and your body is not caught up. Before agriculture arrived roughly 10,000 years ago, your ancestors lived in small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers, typically 50 to 150 people. That is it. That is your entire world. Everyone you would ever know, ever eat with, ever fight beside, ever grieve with, all within shouting distance. In communities this small, survival was a group project, not a metaphor, a literal, daily, life-or-death collaboration. You shared food, you shared shelter, you shared child-rearing responsibilities. If your hunting party came back empty, someone else fed your children. If you fell sick, someone else carried your load. The boundary between mine and ours was almost non-existent. And according to Christopher Ryan and Casilda Jetha, who spent years synthesizing anthropological, primatological, and archaeological evidence in their research compiled in the book Sex at Dawn, sexual partners were often shared too, not as a scandal, as a social norm. This is what anthropologists call polygyndry, meaning many males and many females forming a fluid, overlapping mating network rather than exclusive pairs. It sounds radical from where you are sitting, but when you zoom out to the actual fossil record, the comparative anatomy, and the surviving hunter-gatherer societies, it starts to look like the default setting for your species. Look at your own body for a moment. Compared to most other primates, human males have relatively large testes for their body size. That is not a random accident. In evolutionary biology, large testes are a signature of what is called sperm competition, the biological arms race that happens when multiple males mate with the same female within a short window. Your body, the one you walk around in today, was built for a world where that was happening regularly. Female anatomy tells the same story. The human female orgasm, unlike in most other mammals, is not tightly linked to ovulation. It does not serve reproduction in a simple mechanical sense. What it does do, as Ryan and Jetha point out, is encourage repeated mating with multiple partners. The physiology was not designed for exclusivity. It was designed for participation. But bodies are only part of the evidence. Look at what happened to human societies that remained isolated from agriculture long enough for us to actually observe them. Richard Lee, a Canadian anthropologist who spent decades living alongside the Jew/Hoansi San people of the Kalahari Desert, documented a society where food was shared almost completely equally and where sexual jealousy, as Westerners understand it, barely functioned as a social force. The Jew/Hoansi had what Lee called a fierce commitment to egalitarianism that extended across every resource, including intimate relationships. Polly Wiesner, an anthropologist who studied the same people over 40 years, found that their social bonding rituals, including stories told around fires late into the night, were saturated with sexual humor, sexual reference, and a cultural comfort with the idea that desire was a communal, not a private matter. The Mosuo people of southwestern China, sometimes called the last matrilineal society, practice what they call walking marriages. A woman invites a man to visit her at night. He leaves in the morning. No cohabitation. No financial entanglement. Children are raised by the woman and her brothers. Paternity is not the organizing principle of their society. Children belong to the mother's household, and that is enough. The Wario people of Venezuelan Guyana, even today, hold ceremonial periods during which formal partnerships are suspended and adults are permitted to mate freely with whomever they choose. It is not a collapse of social order. It is a ritual reaffirmation of a much older order. These are not isolated outliers. Ryan and Jetha cataloged dozens of such societies, enough to argue that the pattern of relaxed, non-possessive sexuality in small-scale communities is not the exception in human history. It is the original condition. So what changed? Agriculture. When humans began farming roughly 10,000 years ago, something seismic happened to human relationships. For the first time, land and stored food could be accumulated. For the first time, wealth could be passed down to children. And for that inheritance to mean anything, you needed to know which children were yours. That single requirement, paternity certainty, rewired human social organization from the ground up. Suddenly, female sexuality needed to be controlled. Suddenly, virginity had value. Suddenly, marriage became a legal and economic contract rather than a fluid emotional bond. Suddenly, jealousy went from a minor personal feeling to a moral and legal framework enforced by religion, law, and violence. The ancient Romans actually recognized this shift explicitly. Roman writers refer to monogamy as unnatural, noting that it ran against the grain of human instinct. Some Roman wedding traditions included ritual periods of communal sexuality before the formal ceremony, a way of symbolically acknowledging and appeasing the older, wilder nature the bride was agreeing to leave behind. You are, in other words, not living in the natural state of your species. You are living in an experiment that is 10,000 years old, which, on the evolutionary timeline, is almost nothing. Your genes predate agriculture by hundreds of thousands of years. Your body's reward systems, your tendency toward novelty, your wandering attention, the specific neurochemistry of new attraction, all of that predates the invention of plow by so long that it barely registers. This is not a permission slip. It is not an argument that anything goes or that commitment is meaningless. It is something more interesting than that. It is an explanation for why sustaining long-term monogamy takes genuine effort and constant reinvention, for why the chemistry of a new relationship feels so different from the settled warmth of a long one, for why every culture on Earth has had to build elaborate legal, religious, and social structures around monogamy to make it function, because it does not come naturally or automatically. Structures that had to be invented precisely because the underlying biology kept pulling in another direction. The question is not whether your instincts are right or wrong. They are neither. They are ancient. They are 300,000 years old and running on hardware that was never updated for the world you are actually living in. So the next time you feel something inconvenient, something that does not fit neatly inside the story your culture tells about how human desire is supposed to work, remember where it comes from. Remember the small band, the shared fire, the 150 people who were your entire universe. And remember that you came into this world carrying every single one of them inside you. How many people have you slept with in your life? Whatever your answer is, it was shaped by 10,000 years of agriculture, religion, and law pressing hard against 300,000 years of something much older, much wilder, and much more honest about what you actually are.